For MP1, Team Datum decided to use Apache Kafka as our tool. So what is Kafka? Basically, Kafka is a messaging protocol for handling real-time data. It allows stream pipelines where you take in some data as input and you continually transform it until you get the output that you're looking for. The main abstraction in Kafka is a topic, and that's basically just a queue of messages that is multi-producer and multi-consumer. So Kafka is pretty fast. It can handle a lot of data, high throughput, low latency, and it can scale to a large number of nodes running in a cluster. So why would anyone want to use Kafka? Like I said before, it's just a messaging system, but it's performant, and it's pretty simple to wrap your head around. Basically, there's topics that handle these messages, and they're partitioned to be separated across different nodes in a cluster. And if you want to write to these topics, you just say what partition you want to write to, and if you want to read from them, you just say which topic and partition you want to read from. So the details of setting it up on the VM, Kafka comes pretty much set up. You can download it from Apache's website. The only thing to note is that Kafka depends on Zookeeper to handle some of its internal state, so you have to start up the Zookeeper process before you start up Kafka. So not too difficult on the Kafka setup, but one thing that is nice to have in addition to the basic Kafka install is Kafka Manager, and that's just a user interface for interacting with Kafka. So sometimes it's a little bit nicer to use a GUI as opposed to the command line interface for Kafka, and Kafka Manager just lets you see what the state of Kafka is at the moment. So you can see what brokers are running in your cluster, you can check the topics, the offsets, and it also let you create topics and modify any configs you want. Just one note is that Kafka Manager officially supports Kafka version 0.9.0.1, but you can still use the latest version, Kafka 10. You just have to lie to Kafka Manager when you set it up. So just tell it you're running version 9 and everything should work just fine. So here's some more details about exactly how to set up Kafka Manager. So you can go through these steps if you want to set it up, but we don't need to talk about it in the video. So this is what Kafka Manager looks like. It's pretty easy to use GUI. So you can see this is a test 1 topic. You can look at how many partitions it has, how many messages have been written to it. We'll see that in the demo. So what did we actually go ahead and do? So let me motivate a more realistic task, and then we'll go into the problem we actually solved. So imagine that you have an API that lets you see the song title and the artist currently being played on a bunch of radio stations. So say the API lets you see local FM stations, let you see satellite radio stations, and then you have a separate API that lets you query a music metadata database. So you might want to take in that real-time radio station data, put that on the Kafka, and then supplement it with this metadata from this other source. So basically you're setting up a stream pipeline where you input some data, do some transformations on it, and maybe you want to send this as the final step, pipe this into some application that helps users find radio stations to listen to or something like that. So we didn't actually implement that because we don't have access to those APIs. So what we did was we took, there's this million song data set that's publicly available. We converted a subset of that into JSON to use as our input to Kafka, and then we used the Kafka Python API to make a stream pipeline. So the first stage is just to read that JSON file that we took from the million song data set. It's going to write that on the Kafka topic. Then we're going to have a separate set of processes to read off that initial topic, transform the data with some metadata, and put it onto a final topic. We also made a separate Python process that is able to read the messages off the Kafka topic, so it's similar to like the Unix tail utility. So basically the idea of this task is just to get a feel for what Kafka can do. So use the API to read and write to Kafka topics, make a stream pipeline, which is what Kafka is good at. We're also going to use the consumer group functionality, which lets you parallelize stage of the pipeline, so I have multiple processes doing the same task. And then the tail utility uses the ability to seek to specific offsets inside a topic. All right, let's take a look at some stuff. So basically our solution consists of these three files. There's a basic song producer to load the data, there's the information adder which adds the metadata, and then there's our tail utility. And we have this JSON file which has a bunch of stuff in it, but basically it has like a song title, has a bunch of metadata about the song, like the tempo, the duration. So I'm going to set up Kafka tail utility to start reading the output topic that we're going to write to. So this is the data that we've written to before, but as you'll see when we start up the stages of our pipeline, data will get written to there. So first I'm going to spin up a couple instances of the information adder. So that's going to utilize the consumer group to use multiple processes in one stage of the pipeline. And those processes will be reading from the topic written to by the basic song producer. So this is going to write the song title, artist, and radio station to a Kafka topic. So once this starts up, you'll be able to see the data flow through. So it's going from the JSON file through the basic song producer, it's writing to a Kafka topic, and then those information adders are picking up the data into that Kafka topic and writing it out. And up here, the Kafka tail utility is printing out the values. So there's multiple processes running the consumer group for the information adder, so they're just tagged with their process ID. So there's the last bit of information came from process ID 19473, but if you scroll up a little bit, you can see that data is also being written by another process. And then over here in the left screen, you just have Kafka Manager pulled up, so you can see the radio station data topic view. So I had this open before I started. You can see how many messages were written to this topic. If I refresh, you'll see that since we've been running, we've written some more messages to the topic. Alright, so that was one thing that you could do with Kafka, but it can handle a lot of other use cases as well. So at its core, it's just a messaging protocol, so it can be used for any situation where you need to communicate between processes. So like we showed, it's good for stream processing. It might be good for handling data coming from a lot of different users in real time, as you might see in a website. And since Kafka is persistent, it's good for creating a commit log, which could be used to recover from a node failure, just play back messages from. And a lot of different companies are using Kafka in real life, so it's got a lot of production usage out of it. And the end.